Welcome to the British Online School podcast, where today we're going to be discussing education and the Green Party. Joining us today to discuss their education and their political journey is Vix Lowthion. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's really good to be here.
So, as already mentioned, Vix is the UK Green Party's education spokesman, but also on top of that, a teacher, mother of three, Isle of Wight resident and MP hopeful back in 2019, plus a proud tortoise owner who, looking at your Twitter feed earlier, seems to be in the fridge right now. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's the winter, so the safest place for the tortoise to be is in the fridge.
Oh, right. I never knew that. I learned something new. So to start off with, I've got to ask, why was it the Green Party that you aligned yourself with instead of the other parties that we have here in the UK?
Well, I was relatively late to politics. I didn't join a political party until I joined the Greens about 6 years ago, because I was studying. I was studying with the Open University. I already have a first degree in history, and I went to the Open University in the evenings when I had small children to keep myself occupied, and I was studying science, and I hadn't really studied science past GCSE before. And then I followed chemistry, geology, energy, sustainability, renewable energy, and engineering. And through that, I thought the biggest challenge that's facing us is energy security and climate change. And I joined the party.
And you think the Green Party is sort of the biggest promoter of that? Then I guess by their name, they sort of sound like it. But to you, when you read through the rest of them, it was that party that stood out.
Yeah, of course, other parties, which is brilliant, other parties are starting to get on board with some of the issues, but not to the extent that we need to meet the challenge that we're facing in the next 10 years, really. And the Green Party, obviously, a political party with people that councillors all across the country, but also they are able to have a platform and to try and push the other parties to taking climate change and biodiversity and wildlife much more seriously. And the policies come from the members, so the policies are being changed all the time.
Oh, okay, brilliant. So then more specifically about your role as educational spokesperson, what does that entail and what do you have to do as being part of that for the Green Party?
Yeah, so it's not like with other political parties where the leaders decide what the policies are, and it's in the Green Party, members decide what the policies are, and they put them forward, they write them, and they take them to conference. So the spokesperson for education or for transport or for health is the voice and the face of that policy that's already been decided by members. So I go across, before the pandemic, I'd be going and speaking at various events across England and Wales. At the moment, I do rather a lot of stuff online, like I'm doing here today.
Okay, brilliant. And we'll come on to sort of the education side of it a bit more. But I just want to ask a quick question, because I'm not really very political. I'm not a Green Party member. I'm not a member of any political party. But the Green Party don't seem to get many MPs. But when I look at sort of what you're promoting, sort of investing in housing, food, jobs, energy security, that sounds like a bit of common sense to me. So why do you not think that comes across in the results at elections?
Yeah, well, we have a political system where at MP elections, so for Westminster, it's first past the post. So in your constituency, you can win with less than half the votes as a Conservative MP, and all the votes are split with the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrats, all of those different parties. So although the Green Party have over 1 million votes, they're spread out all across these different constituencies, which means that there's only 1 or 2 places where there's enough Greens, because people want to make their votes count. So they don't always vote for the party that they think has the best policies. They vote for the party that they think is most likely to win. And because the Green Party is probably the newer one of some of these parties, it takes a lot of convincing that the Green Party can win in your area. It's different with other elections. So for councils, for town councils, parish councils, for county councils and borough councils, there are hundreds of Green Party councillors. In the European Parliament, there were 6 Green Party MPs, which is a large number crossing the whole of the country. So I think it's really, for Westminster is the big problem because of the way in which we elect MPs.
Right. Okay. Because I was looking at something as well. Like, I must admit, when we first contacted you and we were said that this could go ahead, I sort of had a pre-notion of what a Green Party member was, and that may be wrong of me to think before knowing. But I sort of looked through your profiles, the podcast you've done, the recent letter you sent out to the Isle of Wight residents, talking about the COP26 and all that lot. And actually, I sort of agreed with a lot of what you said, and I would consider you a mild Green member, because I think a lot of people shift the idea that the Green Party, these people gluing themselves to the floor, chaining themselves to the fence. That's a fair representation that you get linked with that or not?
That's really interesting that you say that, because I would have thought before I joined the party that a typical Green are tree hugging, vegan, yogurt weaving people with beards, yeah, and I don't have any of those traits. And actually, when you join the party, not that many people do. It's interesting that you talk about the actions that Extinction Rebellion or Insulate Britain are taking, because they aren't, some of them might be Green Party members, I guess, but they aren't Green Party policies or Green Party things that they do, because the Greens are about making those changes, but through a political sphere. So obviously, if we want to make big changes to save the planet, as it were, there are lots of different ways you can do that. You can do that through recycling. You can do that through, walking and cycling yourself. You can do that through joining a political party and getting more of a say at various different branches of government. Those people taking direct action are another branch of getting attention for it, but I wouldn't say that that's what all Green Party members think we should do. In fact, if the Green Party was able to have proportionally the right number of MPs, so that'd be about 50, according to how many votes that we got proportionally, then perhaps we wouldn't need to have people, sticking themselves to roads and chaining themselves to lorries and smashing windows that some of those people are taking. We really should be doing it in a more constructive way. And the fact that people are feeling have to do that is because the political system doesn't work to give Greens this fair representation, so that these things can be discussed in a safe and calm and considered fashion.
Yeah, I like that. I like the way you put that across. Yeah, definitely. Now, I could speak ages about politics and obviously the recent COP26 that's come up. We could talk about that. But being a school, I think we should, and obviously your role, really focus on the education side of it. So I'd like to ask you some quite specific educational questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
So the first one is quite a broad question, but what vision does the Green Party itself have for the British education system?
Yeah, so we have got quite a comprehensive Green Party policy or list of policies that you can read. Everybody can read them, and they've been added to and developed through time. But a vision for Green Party schooling is putting children first and making sure that education lasts outside of the classroom. So that could be education, outside in the environment, getting out into the outdoors. That could be increasingly education online. There are a number of young people who are home educated, for instance, and the Greens have got quite a pro home education policy. The vision is that we shouldn't be doing tests which aren't helping and informing the children or the teacher to make progress. At the moment, there are rather a lot of tests which are for the government to test that the schools are working, rather than to inform and to help the students. Not against all testing, but making sure that it's going to be most efficient. So, and protecting mental health, special educational needs, making sure that schools are inclusive of all of the diversity that we have. Because I think increasingly, and as a teacher, increasingly I've seen that schools are one size fits all, and it's not the fault of the school, it's the system that the government are doing. You must get this level at this age, when actually young people are humans and they develop at different rates, and some are going to go faster, some are going to go slower. Eventually people are going to get there, and we need to be supporting people at the stage that they're at, rather than judging them at a particular age. So it's an approach which is more pupil and child focused with that, but also with longer term issues to solve, such as the climate, where we can't stop learning in the classroom. We need to be learning outside and beyond once you leave school too.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that actually I resonated a lot with, especially sort of the green side of it and learning outside the classroom. It's what we're trying to promote heavily here, our extracurricular activities, which are harder to do online, but we are getting them to sort of grow their own fruit, grow their own veg, look after their garden, their own environment.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got a lot that I can agree with there. And I was going to ask this a bit later on, because you brought it up. You're pro, and your party then is pro online learning, is it?
That's a really good question. So we are currently looking at the whole of our education policy, because some of it was decided 4 or 5 years ago and the country has changed a lot. And I think the pandemic has given us great opportunities just as a political party. So I am the education spokesperson, but I sit on the national executive in charge of policy development. And we have an annual policy fest, and it used to be in person. But last year we did it online, 4 or 5 evenings and a couple of weekends. And the level of engagement and participation increased, and people really, adults, members really enjoyed being able to get together with workshops and training and meetings in that way. So we're revisiting our policy, because I can't make up policy, I'm just the voice of it. The members have to decide. So this is one of the things that we're looking at, because I think there are real gains from online learning. And I think that I teach sixth form on a daily basis. And I think that the skills that you learn through online learning, especially the older that you get, are skills that you're going to need when you leave school, which is, self-direction, collaboration online, bringing together all of those things, and making sure you're in charge of your own time. And I think that certainly we make a great use just at school with using online platforms, whether that was in the pandemic, speaking like I am to you, or whether that's through using digital technologies. And those things are great, but we need to make sure that they're safe and that they're accessible for everybody, and that we also still have a level of autonomy in schools and choice. Because I think some of the things that I'm a bit concerned about is this idea that all teachers or human beings, people like yourself, can be replaced by, one video that's telling you everything you need to know about history, one video that's telling you how you need to teach maths. And I think that diversity and creativity and that personal relationship with your teacher or your mentor is really important. So I think we're at quite an interesting crossroads when it comes to education. And we've had adults doing this stuff, so why don't we get young people to look at how online learning works for them too?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's a big part of the ethos we've brought here. Yeah, we want to be a modern new school, but those real traditions of those personal relationships you do get with teachers and fellow students are so important. And that's why we refuse to sort of teach via video. It's all personal teaching, live teaching. That we're exactly the same as that. And it's nice to hear that's coming from a different angle as well. So if you were to become Education Secretary tomorrow, let's say the Greens got into power, what would be the first thing you would change in the current education system?
Ooh, that's really interesting. Probably review the curriculum. I think that some of it is, there needs to be a balance, I think, with trying to equip young people to meet the demands of a modern world outside of school. So I think ensuring that we have those skills, and those skills are foremost in the curriculum. For instance, obviously online stuff, but also confidence and character building and opportunities outside of the classroom with volunteering and all of these things, creativity, drama, sport. Unfortunately, the way in which a lot of schools work, well, the system works, is that it judges a lot of schools based on exam performance. And we know as a parent and as a teacher that exam performance is important, but also all of those other things that make us a happy and productive adult are also important. And if we need to start to judge schools or to value schools on all of the enrichment stuff that they can do as well. And at the moment, those seem to be happy add-ons rather than things which our government feel are really, really important. It's all English maths, and some of those other subjects. But I think that if we started to look at what adults do we want and how do we make those adults and support young people to get those characteristics, to get those skills. So when I talk about a curriculum overview, I don't mean like a national curriculum overview. It's more to do with a more holistic curriculum overview. And I think we could tackle a lot of issues of confidence, bullying, special education needs, if we started to do that and to look at all of the other things that schools can offer too.
Yeah, definitely. Now, this is the 14th podcast I've done, and I ask it during all of them one question, like, do you think your school education helped you prepare for life? And lots of people say different parts of their schooling, but no one ever does say the exams. So I think that's a really good point to make. Unfortunately, yeah, it does seem to be the way, doesn't it? Schools are set up to help you pass exams, which it shouldn't be. And that's something else we're trying to change it. So yeah, again, I find myself agreeing with a lot of what you said. And again, when I first thought we were going to do this podcast, I thought we'd have a bit of conflicting views, but it's been a bit quite enlightening. But if we can go a bit more personal now, down to you, just because I obviously did a bit of research into you before you come on. You have some strong views on Ofsted and academies, don't you?
Yes. And I suppose it follows on for me with what you were saying about being common sense. So if you take academies, academies are a way to fragment and to diverse and to take accountability away from local areas. That's my problem with them. So it means that rather than being accountable to your local council, where you can vote people in and vote people out to make changes there, decisions are made sometimes many, many miles away from the area that they live in. Some of these schools are, councils can't build new schools now, and they have to get academies to build them, which means that all the needs of the local area, if you need new primary schools, new secondary schools, different types of sports schools, it's more difficult to make those changes. So I don't have a problem with teachers and head teachers that are in these academies, but it's the way that the system is structured now that takes power away from local communities that I'm concerned about. And likewise, Ofsted, we definitely need to have a system to increase standards in schools and to get schools to work together. But I don't think Ofsted gets the schools to work together to help that. It seems to be more about labelling and putting pressure on schools in that way. So Greens would have a more collaborative way of improving schools. So some schools have certain strengths, some schools have certain weaknesses. People should be aware of that and be able to support each other through that way and learn from each other. It's what we do in schools as teachers. We share good practice, we share good ideas, and we improve things in that way. And I think that we already have, exam results and so on, which provide a level of quantitative accountability. So, why do we need people who, to be frank, may not have been teaching recently? The head of Ofsted has never been a teacher. The system seems to be very detached from those people who've got experience, when really we should be getting people who've got good experience to share good ideas and to share good practice and increase standards in that way.
Yeah, totally. The one thing I will come back to is on academies. It's something you didn't say, which I wondered if you thought is the how could I put this to be, the discrepancies that sort of go on with the money side of it as well, because academies shouldn't make profits, but there's been lots of things in the news recently where money seems to be disappearing in academies. And I know that may be a bit rich saying that from a private school, that we're worried about the money in the academies, but that's something that I feel very uncomfortable as well when I see these academies taking over the public schools.
And it's public money.
Yeah.
So if you as a private school, you're accountable to the people that are paying you the money, and so they would expect a certain standard of financial, openness and transparency. Whereas with the academies, this is public money which has been siphoned off into large wages, and there's little accountability that the parents or the taxpayers have with that. And sometimes there can be an inequality. So where I live on the Isle of Wight, we have some schools that are brand new buildings and they've got lots of support, and they tend to be the academies, and some of the other schools don't have that. And really we should be spreading out and sharing the taxpayers' money across the board, rather than favouring certain types of schools, because all the kids are the same and all the needs are the same and the community needs are the same. So yeah, the financial part of it and the inequalities with it does concern me, yes.
Yeah, okay. So keeping on that trend of money, because I think this is the one thing maybe we won't agree on, is you're not a fan of the tuition fees in England and Wales, are you, for universities? Why?
Yeah, no, I'm not a fan of tuition fees.
Why is that?
Because I think that there are fairer ways of funding schools. So effectively, the tuition fee, the way in which the whole thing is structured, is effectively a graduate tax.
Right.
And I think
Actually,
we should be fair about that.
I'm going to stop you there then, because finally, it's nice to hear someone in the political spectrum call it what it is, because I fear it's misrepresented in the news a lot. It's talked about as a loan and a debt, but it's not, is it? It is more of a taxation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't have a problem with. Yeah, I don't have a problem with being open about that. And if that's how we choose to fund, and we choose to get the people who've benefited, and I would argue that the whole of society benefits from people who are better educated, whether it's doctors, whether it's, business people, everybody who gets a degree just improves themselves, but also improves the whole of society. So I think that if we're going to get the people that have taken the degree to pay, then we should have a call it what it is, which is a graduate tax, and have taxation, and not be afraid of saying, if we want nice things, we have to pay for them. The system that we have tends to put debt, or it may well be psychological as much as it is practical, but it still is putting debt on young people at a very young age, when already young people are finding it difficult to get on the property ladder. They're finding it difficult to be able to fund high housing costs and rental costs, and it's putting all the burden on young people at a young age with that. Whereas actually what we should be saying is, those of us who have benefited from society should be able to have the strongest shoulders to be able to pay it, and just be honest about it. And I think that system would be one that Greens could support much more than the current system, which is it's illogical to me. Education is for the benefit of the whole of society, rather than making 18-year-olds feel that to make that decision they're going to burden themselves with 30, 40, 50, 60,000 pounds worth of debt. That should come later on, when they're benefiting from it themselves.
Yeah, and I think telling students that they're leaving with that debt is a negative thing as well, because like you say, it's not paid back like an ordinary loan or an ordinary mortgage. It is paid back via tax. And yeah, I think that is the biggest mistake mainstream politicians are making, that they're not being honest about that. And yes, I again agree with everything you just said. But do you not think it's unfair and a bit prejudiced, the fact that in Scotland, everyone else, when we were part of the EU, could go there and study for free, but they wouldn't let the English and the Welsh?
I can see why you would think that, because everybody from England and Wales would want to go and get a free education literally over the border, wouldn't they? So I guess part of devolution is that the Scottish government can decide how they want to do things, in the same way part of Brexit is the governments of England, Wales and the United Kingdom decide how they want to do things. So have to respect the devolution part of that, and if that's their choice, that's their choice.
Right, okay. And then why did you decide to become a teacher then? What was it that attracted you to this profession?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess I had a really positive experience of school. I enjoyed school a lot. I went to, a little village primary school and the local church school for high school. And I just enjoyed education. And when I went to university, I volunteered in high schools in a student tutoring system. And I thought, I just loved the energy inside schools, and the fact that although you have the structure of the timetable, every day is different. And you get to, make those meaningful relationships with young people and with colleagues. It feels like it's creative. You can create great lessons. You can do a lot of other activities. I think that I just really like schools, and I want other young people to enjoy their time at school as well.
Ah, fantastic. Well, based on everything you just said, I'm pretty sure I'm going to know what the answer to this is. But with everything you've done in the political frame and your personal life and your career as a teacher, do you believe your school education helped prepare you for this?
That's a good question. I would say yes, in a way that I've been in the sphere of education. I've got 20 odd years of teaching experience. I think one thing in which my school didn't prepare me is that they kind of flagged something up early on when I was in sixth form, that maybe I should be interested in politics, and I wasn't. But they took me on a 2-day trip to Oxford to look at studying politics, philosophy and economics, which you may know is PPE, which is a subject that lots of prime ministers have done. And I think they thought that, you know, this is something that I would like to do, even though I wasn't party political at all at the time. And my parents hadn't gone to university. This seemed to be a very big step to me, just to go to university, never mind to go to one like Oxford. So I didn't apply. And obviously 20 odd years, 30 years later, something that my teacher saw in me, it took me a while to find that myself. And so I guess having more of experience with meeting people who'd been successful in those spheres of life, I think that would have really helped me at school.
Right. Okay, nice. And if you could put one thing into the curriculum, I know you said you want to completely change the curriculum, but if you could just add one thing into curriculum that every single student should be studying right now, what would that one thing be?
Oh, an actual topic.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, yeah. Oh, an actual topic. That's really interesting. Because I think there's a huge variety of topics, but I think that one thing which is overlooked, one topic that's overlooked is earth science and geology. I think as a parent, I notice that my children don't really study it so much, and that's what I'm now teaching, and I'm doing my Open University degree, finishing it off this year in a degree in STEM, science, technology, engineering, maths, with earth science. I think that it's very much overlooked the history of our planet and the record how climate change has been going on for billions of years. You know, this is not anything new. All of that I think is really important, and looking at how evolution and how creatures change and, you know, geohazards. I think all of that, there isn't enough time at the moment in the curriculum. Certainly science is about a lot of physics and chemistry and biology, but I really think that earth science is a fascinating area, and it covers a whole host of the challenges that we're going to be facing in the coming years.
Okay, so when you say global warming has been happening for billions of years, then are you on the side of it that we're actually in a cycle then, and that the heating up of the planet is sort of what we should expect from previous time? Just because as a Green Party member, I wouldn't expect to have heard what you just said.
Yeah, we're always in cycles. The difference that we're happening now is that the change is happening astronomically fast. So usually in geological time, those cycles last 127,000 years, you know, over a great period of time, whether we've been making changes in the last 150 years. And that is because we've dug stuff out of the ground and burnt it, and the Earth is trying to reestablish itself. You know, if we fail to tackle climate change from a humanity point of view, it's humanity that's largely going to suffer, and it's humanity that are going to have to deal with the consequences. The Earth will endure. The Earth will find a way, just as we no longer have dinosaurs on the planet because they didn't endure, the mammals came forward. So Earth will change and adapt, but humanity is probably going to be one of those things that is going to really struggle with it. And as fellow humans, we should be there helping fellow humans. So when I talk about people saving the planet, I get why they're saying that, because it's a shorthand slogan, but actually it's saving humans and wildlife as part of that, because we rely on wildlife, we rely on insects, we rely on, you know, animals, we rely on trees and plants. But it's humanity's impact in the last 100 years, which is the rate of change, means that it's happening much, much faster than it's ever happened, certainly at the time that humans have been around.
Yeah. Now, I wasn't going to talk too much about the COP26 and that lot, but just because of what you just said, what do you think, or what do you think would have been the most important thing for all the nations to have agreed on to combat the changes we are seeing now, regardless of what they have picked and what they didn't? But if you would have said the one thing they should have all took home and done in every single country, what would that be?
Tackling fossil fuels.
Is that?
I think that it's tackling fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are the big driver of it. From a geological point of view, you're digging out stuff that's been down there 300, 400 million years and burning it in 150 years. The planet, it can't carry on like that. It won't. That's what's causing the rapid change. Yes, there are issues of deforestation. Yes, there are issues with helping the developing countries. Yes, there are issues with, you know, improving transport and clean air and pollution. All of those things are important. But fossil fuels, by that, not just coal, but oil and gas. Obviously, I think we still need to use petroleum There are various positive aspects of that, no least pharmaceuticals. So I'm not saying that everything needs to stay in the ground, but we need to rapidly look at alternative forms of energy than oil and gas and coal, because if we don't, then we are going to be in increasing trouble, not just for us, but our kids. And they will look back on this moment and think, what on earth are you doing? This is illogical. You knew what was happening and you didn't do anything to stop it. We're talking good stuff, but we need to take action when it comes to fossil fuels.
So you're not net zero, you don't agree with complete net zero then?
Well, that would effectively be net zero, because net zero would mean that you have the trees and you do all of the things which are positive as well as negative. I think you obviously can't leave 100% of fossil fuels in the ground, because there are certain things that they can provide which are useful, but not burning them. It's the burning of them and putting the emissions into the atmosphere which is causing the problems. So those companies that are doing it, they need to be supported. There needs to be a transition in terms of jobs to move from things which are dominant on fossil fuels to renewable, clean energy. We've got lots and lots of alternatives out there. They just need government support to make them happen, such as tidal.
Right. Okay, fair enough. Right, I'm going to get back onto the education side of it then. As a teacher, when you were going through your career and then you had your children, did you find it changed the way you taught?
Ooh. I took a gap. So I was teaching in a different part of the country, and then I took a gap. When I came back, I guess because I teach older kids, I suppose I was their age and now I'm not. So I suppose it changed the way I teach, in the fact that I can't relate to, and I don't even try to relate to a lot of youth culture now, because it moves so fast. And I noticed that with my own kids, who are 13, 15 and 10, that I'm never going to understand that. So I suppose in a way I've just stopped trying to understand some of all the jargon and things, and just tried to focus on other aspects of it. Maybe it might change the way I taught if I taught primary school kids, but it takes a while from being a parent to having the older students. Saying that, I'm lucky that I have 3 boys, and I've always find it much easier to teach teenage boys than I have to teach teenage girls. So I feel very lucky in that respect.
Brilliant. Right. So the final 2 questions I ask every person who comes onto the podcast. Number 1 being, what was your fondest memory of your time in school?
Yeah, and I think that it's always going to be those extracurricular stuff, isn't it? So I was really lucky in school. We had a school choir, and although it was just an ordinary state school, the choir was really good. And we got to be in Sainsbury's Choir of the Year in London, and we travelled to New York, and we travelled to Dublin, and we sang, and those songs are still there in my head, and my love of music. And I've just recently joined the staff choir at school for the Christmas concert that we're doing, and those memories and that love of music hasn't left me all those years later. And having that opportunity, the first time I ever flew was with the school choir. Those opportunities that schools can provide are really, really precious, and of any sort of extracurricular to expand your horizons. And for me it would be music.
Very nice. And the last question, maybe the most important one: if you could give any piece of advice to any student in school right now, what would that one piece of advice be?
You own your learning. You take responsibility for your learning. You being proactive about your learning. It can be quite easy, I think, in this day and age to be quite passive when it comes to watching things, listening to things, doing something because the teacher's told you to do it. Whereas in the big wide world, the people who are succeeding, and the people who are succeeding with the older children that I teach, the 17, 18-year-olds, they are the ones who are reading things themselves because they enjoy it. They're finding things out. They're making links between things that they've been reading and watching and engaging and talking and taking those opportunities. So it's just be proactive, take those opportunities, own your learning, and that those skills that you can learn at school with that would equip you for being successful and happy adults. And that's really what we want.
Very nice. If people want to follow your story, follow your political career, where could they find you?
Oh, that's a good question. I have a website, votevix.org on there. I'm on Twitter, which is Vix, Vixl, and Facebook and around. And yeah, I'm going to be doing the spokespeople role for the next couple of years and being on the national executive. So yeah, you should be able to find me with a quick search.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And I must repeat myself, I am surprised at how much we agreed on, because like I say, when I thought about a Green Party member, this wasn't what I was expecting. And I think that's my own ignorance that has come to light there. And I've been very pleasantly surprised actually speaking to you and hearing your thoughts and the party thoughts behind education and a lot of other stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, it is just common sense, isn't it, really? And being able to be bold enough to be able to say the things that other parties are afraid to do. So quite happy to put that on. Thanks for the opportunity.
No, thank you very much. Thank you for watching our podcast today. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to make sure you never miss out on the new ones we post every Monday and Wednesday. If you are interested in enrolling yourself or someone else into the British Online School, be sure to visit our website, britishonlineschool.co.uk, or you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and send us a direct message there as well. Just use the handle @BritOnlineSchool, spelled SCH, and you can find all our links below. Have a fantastic day, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.